Welcome back. We're live again on YouTube and LinkedIn for another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. My name is Josef Martens, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. With us today is Stephen Fridakis. Stephen is the CISO in residence at Cyderes, a global cybersecurity company. Before that, he held other tech executive roles for companies such as Oracle Health, Alphabet, Weight Watchers, HBO, and several other well-known organizations. And of course, today we're thrilled to have him with us. Stephen, it's a pleasure to have you here in this conversation.
Thank you, Joseph. I'm very pleased to be here.
Stephen, the topic, as you know, is leadership. You're super successful in your journey, in your leadership evolution. And when you look at your own journey, when you reflect on your own journey, what do you think are the contributors to your success? What has got you to where you are today?
I have been very lucky in my journey. I started many years ago as a developer and moved to, by way of quality assurance, project management into security. I found security to be a good fit for me because it combines risk management, a little bit of knowing the technology and how things work. But what I found was that I had good mentors. I had people who believed in my capabilities, and they took the time to actually help me understand what matters. I also had a lot of good opportunities. So sometimes it takes a little bit of, I think, skill to identify the opportunity and make sure that it's a good fit for your skills, but then also devote the time. The last thing, though, is also, I think, by character, sort of by design, I do take risks. So you have to make sure that if something doesn't appear to be a perfect fit, but it is something that you would like to devote the time to learn, devote the time to improve yourself, and you feel that it is sort of a partial fit. There were situations in my life that it actually worked okay. I was the CISO of HBO, and I can tell you, when I went to HBO, I was working for Amazon, and during the interview process, I was saying to everyone, I know nothing about broadcasting. I mean, I'm a customer, I love your programs, but I'm not a broadcasting person. And they said to me, we actually want a CISO who is not from broadcasting. We wanted somebody. Okay. So if I had taken the premonition that, these people are looking for a broadcast person, I wouldn't even have applied, but I did apply, and it sort of ended up being an amazing journey. I learned so much. I was like really happy to say, hey, guess what? I'm securing The Sopranos or, Sex in the City those days. That would have not have been the case. So learning to take a risk, calculated as it may be, but also very much appreciative of my mentors and the time that they spent with me and the belief they had in me that I could actually do the job. That was truly important.
Got it. So risk and mentors are the key topics. Let me dig deeper a little bit first with risk. How do you evaluate the risk? And I'm particularly interested to hear from you if you're more intuitive there, if this is something that's a gut feel about a situation, or do you have some kind of rubric for that evaluation? How do you go about that?
I think you cannot avoid the fact that you're intuitive at some point. However, I want to also talk about a shift. I made a point the early days of my security journey to say, listen, I understand technology. I was a developer. And that to me, that was like a badge of honor. But as time went by, I almost found that even, especially these days, that it can actually appear to be a handicap because we're shifting from a technology-centric world to a risk-centric. That's just a leadership as a technologist is not the case anymore. You're now a leader as a risk manager. So this is the shift that I have seen, especially these last 10 years. So the security leader that talks about patching or network or VLANs is actually somebody who has just lost its audience. You need to shift now gears to become the person who says, what do you have to lose? So this is the framing of the risk conversation. And then the other thing was called the VIT. What is the very important thing? Because you cannot do everything. So we have therefore understand the risk in business terms, and understand how does this risk translate into what is important to you. So here's what I'm trying to say. Let's say you have engaged in a new acquisition, and that new acquisition becomes part of your network ecosystem. Um, so you cannot secure what you cannot quantify. So we love to put our hands around a network and a set of applications, an operation, a factory floor. We love to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, these days it's quite difficult because networks are fluid. So we try to inventory as much as we can, but mostly it becomes a conversation of what are your important assets, what is your current exposure. So you try to identify little things like this, and then you concentrate on what do I have to lose. Let's make sure that I understand what's important to me, what my associated exposure is, and address that. What we just did is a risk conversation. It's a prioritization and quantification. So obviously, when we have this conversation, there is some intuition because everybody in the conversation like this brings some baggage. They say, well, I don't want to admit to an exposure, especially in an M&A situation because of valuations, you know, the game, right? So, uh, but then you confirm, you validate yourself, and there is always the intuition. So again, I'm going to use a security buzzword here, is just trust but verify.
Yep.
So therefore, there is the combination of what I know, what I can see, but at the end of the day, we will confirm what we hear, what you're telling us, and then prioritize. I hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense in the context of the projects that we're running or the technology we have. Do you apply it like that to your own decisions about what step to take?
You
I mean,
you have
it
to
sounds like a
because
very robust structure there, and I'm just wondering, is that
well,
how you assess the
um,
opportunities that are there?
maybe it sounds better on paper than reality, but you you have to sort of adjust. But yes, it is a matter of finite resources, and it is the time where there is always the formal plan. We love to have, and that's what I do. We have a 6 month rotating strategy. I like the joke is okay. We have a 6 month, 3 year plan because the idea is yes, you do have your long term projects, but current vulnerabilities, the business changes, or other things that happen, an attack, all right? Things of that nature actually change the overall plan. But your long-term improvements shouldn't be changed, or
Got it.
your
Yep.
long-term influences. So what you do is, I'm not sure what the percentages are. We call it the 80-20, the 70-30, but the 70 is that we keep making our improvements. We keep working on what we're trying to do long term, but we cannot lose sight of our operational realities or of everything else that's going on.
Okay. Okay. Got it. You mentioned mentors as well. Mentors as being important in your leadership growth. When you think back to the advice that you got from your mentors, what is something that still sticks with you? What's advice you got from one of them that resonated and it's still important to you?
Um, what I learned a long time ago, I was working for when you and I were talking about before, we're talking about one of those big courier companies. I mean, I can name it. I worked for DHL for many years. I had the distinction actually of being a courier. When I was in
Mm-hmm.
college in Athens, I was a courier, a motorcycle courier, believe it or not. and and then out of that, moved through the ranks, and I met someone totally by accident. It was a low time in my professional life, working in accounting. and I met a Greek American fellow.
Mhm.
We became friends, and he asked me to become a quality assurance. I didn't know what that meant, but I signed up. I wanted to become a quality assurance person. Anyway, I was a tester for a billing system. That was essentially what I was doing on paper. These guys have come to migrate to computers. So that's how I got into the more formal way of working in development environments and so on. So, what he taught me and what he worked with me was to actually use the Sherlock style perspective in work to just say, don't believe what you see face value. If you eliminate what is obvious, what is left, and especially in computer testing, that is right,
Okay.
what is left, as weird as it may be, will actually be reality. So he pushed me to be inquisitive. He actually even pushed me to say, innovate. The fact that we don't have automation doesn't mean that you cannot do it. And he said, look how our competition does it. Reach out. In other words, come out of your box and try. As junior as I was, and he said, try and make a difference. Leave behind something better than the way you found it.
Yep.
And as a boss, he gave me the strength and the support, and very much appreciate everything he has done for my career. So, and now obviously try myself to push back and just say, don't settle into your 9 to 5, make it better. And sometimes obviously, we put our money where our mouth is, and we try to say, yes, I can fund it. Sometimes that's not possible, but I haven't forgotten about this, and I'm saying, this is my time now to
Mhm.
pay it back
Yep.
and try and mentor someone. um, Thanks to LinkedIn, I do find, I tell you, on a daily basis, 3 or 4 emails of people who are starting a company, and they say, hey, what about this? Now, half of those are sales. Let's leave those aside. But there are some entrepreneurs, some mostly young folks that say, hey, I got this idea, and I'm trying to be totally honest with them and say, by the way, great idea, but I wouldn't buy it, and this is why.
Got it.
Or
Yep.
great idea, but by the way, this company
Yep.
has already done it, so you're competing with some giant.
That's
Or
established.
great idea, and just, and many of them, I'm actually working with 3 of them right now on a very sort of casual basis, and I love the opportunity to work with
Yep.
them, and help them develop a product. So
Yep.
you do get the opportunity to help and mentor and do that, and I think you should take it.
Yep. Absolutely. I really like the Sherlock method that you mentioned there. I haven't heard that before like this. That's a neat approach. Um,
Mhm.
you shifted to today, what you're doing today. That's great. Let's go there. And I'm gonna shift it back to you though. And the question, where is your focus on your own growth at the moment? So clearly, again, many steps, many successes, and I'm sure they have a very rich toolkit and experiences. But when you look at where you are today, where would you focus your growth, your opportunity to develop at the moment?
So my interests today lie in the following. Compliance is not security, but oh my God, it's taking so much of our time.
Hmm.
Um, so how can we bridge the two? The way I'm looking at it is that we do have all these frameworks. We do have controls that all these frameworks suggest. And guess what? If we combine all of them, we do find significant parts of our operations that they leave out, like development process. Most of the frameworks ignore it. So that aside, I'm just trying to say, is there a way that we can be compliant and secure at the same time?
Hmm.
Because it is almost existential for us, because we're spending so much time, so much effort, and so many resources into becoming compliant. And the more we say, oh, I achieved that, I put it on the wall, guess what? You're no more secure. So that's one thing. The
Okay.
second thing I'm looking at is it is cliche, but how can we move away from network-based security to identity-based? Now, this is not new or innovative, far
Mm-hmm.
from it, but I have always been a big proponent of zero trust. There is one organization, and that is Google, that I worked in my life where it was truly so well implemented because when I was using those were the COVID days. So when I was working remotely and I was connecting, there was very, very basic stuff I could do. And then everything else I could, moving into internal applications, client applications, data, development environment, I had to elevate my credentials or other checks had to be done. And those checks were quite sophisticated. So I'm trying to see how that is now, how can I help my customers now, or even my thought process shift to identity and say, how can we reach the same de facto rules? You know, firewalls are de facto processes. People understand how to build firewall rules. Identities, though, especially non-human, are still at a very, very primitive level of the thought process of how do we deal with them? How do we come up with, you know, something? This is your basics. You know how we say with firewalls, deny all. I don't have to explain that. Anybody who has done firewall rules understands. But when we go to identity, is more, where do we even start? And by the way, can I do a rule and trust that the moment I deploy it, all hell will break loose? And I saw that because I was working with, shame on me, I'm saying this in a public forum, but we were working with a customer and we saw a non-human identity and we said, oh my God, this thing has elevated rights. Well, guess what? That was the payment process. So we built a rule that actually brought down the payment process because we didn't know. I mean, it was a shared identity kind of thing. It was lack of understanding. I mean, shame on us, but it can happen. So anyway, going back to your question, what I'm working on is trying to understand how to implement identity-based methods such as zero trust or others, but do it in a way that it is becoming almost big words here, but templatized in a way that you can actually use it following some method, following some discovery even to just say, this is how it's done with emphasis on non-human.
Okay.
That's the other thing. Now, obviously, this is becoming more important because of AI. But not only. I don't want to jump on that bandwagon necessarily. I'm very sort of thoughtful of that, but it is something that is important. So this is what I'm thinking, and I'm working on, and hopefully something material will come out of it.
Got it. Okay. Let's take a look in the future. So we talked about past, present. Let's take a look in the future. And again, not a question about companies, positions or so, still about your leadership journey. When you look at how you might be leading in a few years' time, let's say 5 years, what do you think will change about the way you lead in a few years?
What I think is going to happen in a few years is that we hope to become more interactive with the information that we have. So here's what I'm trying to say. The data that we generate is very much narrow in its scope. So we generate information. I use information to engage with you based on what I find out there. We'll be able to make more complex decisions. My thought process, though, is that how do we build confidence in what we see? The same way, if you were a doctor, you do diagnostics based on the information that you collect from your telemetry and whatever, or what the patient tells you. So similarly, I'm making a decision. Let's go back to what we said before, an M&A process. Is this company trustworthy? Network? Do they work? And I can actually employ AI or other methods. But what I find is that as years go by, the amount of information and the amount of ability to utilize it for my purposes is going to improve. What also, though, is going to improve is the ability to influence the biases and influence the misinformation. So how do we deal with that? So I believe that the same way we've seen this before in other situations, people will start trusting what they're familiar with. So I'm going to trust, say, this agent or this method or this repository. So this is how I'm saying, how is that going to play? It's fascinating. And I like the opportunity, but AI is unfortunately or fortunately going to do that. We just need to get away from the thought that, hey, it's written on a screen, so it's supposed to be right. I mean, you know what I'm saying. So and understand what the biases and the ideas that are influencing it are. And how do we do that?
Yeah.
That is that's quite what's going to be like the next few years. Does that make sense?
Yep, fascinating. Absolutely. Yeah. Stephen, let me ask you a last question, and then we're going to land the plane. If you had a magic wand and you could change something about how most leaders lead their organizations, what would you change?
I would change how the rhetoric, the plan, and the actions align themselves. We're falling victim of I have to use the same words. And I'm not talking about, our values are people. Yes. But then again, our people are always the most easily discarded asset, despite what we just said.
Yep.
So I would like to not necessarily be compassionate to the process, compassionate to the contributor. That is very important. It's a good goal to have. But what I would love to do is to be able to make sure that the goals are understood and communicated in a good way throughout the management process, from the leader to the intern, and are understood. The methods that we use are only good at a certain compartment. We talk KPI, OKR, this, that, the other, strategic goals, and all of these. But we are very bad about bridging the strategic to the operational. And people feel connection. When I was a courier, it was simple. All deliveries before 4 p.m. Don't be late. That's it. My goal was very clear. As this translates to somebody who's supposed to secure an organization as complex as, say, Google Health, massive amounts of data and sovereignty issues and all of that stuff, how does that strategic goal translate? Because that, if you get that right, you'll be able to prioritize, you'll be able to allocate resources, you know what you need to do above and beyond your small little box. So this is what I would love to be able to do with the one you mentioned about bridging strategy to operation and make it understood what the goals are.
More clarity with the goals. And what I also heard you say at the beginning there is more honesty about what is being communicated, right?
That's right.
Stephen, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure having you in the conversation here.
Same here, Joseph. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
To everyone else out there, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us again for our next podcast. And until then, keep your brain cells active.